Hello there. Testing, testing. We are back. Welcome to the stream. We're doing UI UX today on a Radial menu, a really cool one that I am a huge fan of. So back in the day I played a lot of Apex Legends when it first came out, and when I'm asked to, show some cool UI process, Radial menu, ping menus, maps, on-screen UI, teammate stuff, like all the kind of UI you see in this screenshot here comes to mind as things that really excite me. So we're actually working on creating this kind of radial right now, where there's a central element and these outer elements, and I'll show you a little bit about where we've been on streams so far. So let's just hit play and see where we're at. If I hold down the middle mouse button, I get this little radial here. There is some mouse input still occurring on the character, which is pretty funny, but that's where we're at. Oh, and then everything disappeared. So that's interesting. Okay, so that's where we're at. I just need to close all this down. I'm getting notified by my own channel that I'm online. Got that. Okay, cool. Where are we? Where are we? Right, so today the goals are, I'll just bring the checklist up real quick. See if we can get that checklist on the corner. We want to, well, we don't really want to do this ping ownership thing, so we're going to ignore that. But we do want to do the radial entry shader. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at that. We've got this radial entry that we started scripting on stream last week. We've got all these different elements of the code. But the thing that really powers this is that we have an angle span, which in this case is 45 degrees, and we have a start angle, which in this case is 0, but it could be like 90 degrees off to the right. And then we have some 0 to 1 variants of these, and we use that within a bunch of maths. So here all we're doing is we're rotating the traditional UVs just for, based on the start angle and the half of the angle span, and then we're doing some arctangent logic to basically create this offset here, and then we're gonna clamp that base angle plus span. We're gonna clamp that. This is 1 here and this is 0, and so this is like around 0.1 something, and then this is 0.25 over here somewhere. So what we do is we clamp that. Where do we do that? We do that down here. We're -1 to get it into a space that we want to work with, and divide it by the angle so that we know like how far that span is, and then that gives us also a gradient. From that gradient we can determine the distance from each side, which is pretty cool. Just gonna move this. Then we've got, what else have we got? So that sort of determined that distance to the side multiplied by the radius of the entire circle allows us to determine sort of like the gradient that runs over, and then we smooth step that so we get some soft edges. And so you can actually see that here. If I zoom right into this, the smooth step is basic. You can see in the top one is it smooth, this one is, and so what I want to do right now is actually go in and feather this outer radius. So we get all of that. What else have we got here? We've got the composite opacity here. One thing that I haven't shown is that we actually have the mouse highlighting this, so you can see how the mouse, when it moves to a certain point of the screen, it starts to get more highlighted, and then it moves further away, it starts to become less highlighted. What's essentially happening is it's 1 opacity in the center and less on the edges, and that's essentially, instead of highlighting this through code, I'm highlighting it through the shader using this. There's a mouse angle, I think it's a little function here. There's a material function that comes with the UI lab, the material lab that comes with Unreal, and it basically just exposes this float. It's available in 5.4 onwards. It's a view cursor position, and from that you can do math. So if we minus the center of the screen, we get the direction, and then we can do some arctangent math on that to determine if we're inside or outside of essentially inside or outside of the angle span here. So that's the proximity to that. And if we hit play again, I can show that a little bit better. So here we're just slowly going in, and then we're leaving that radius. And I've also set up, using similar direction math, the inside pip that you can see. So there's a pip that's rotating around now. That's also shader space. So it's also done inside the shader. We've got this little arc here. This one's a lot simpler. You can see it working on the right there. If I spin my mouse around the screen, actually no, you can't, because this element is in the way. So you can see it here. Just moving around the screen like that. I'm going to put this checklist in the top right. Realize we're doing a lot of shader math and you can't actually see the shader math. That's weird. Okay, so yeah, you can see here how we're essentially just doing arctan math and then to rotate this around the screen. Okay, so that's a pretty simple little piece of code there. It gives us this inner radial sort of like spin. This is a bunch of the direction logic as well. And then something else I was working on actually was using the mouse delta to achieve this, because if it's based on your mouse position, it ends up being a little bit unwieldy in terms of where your mouse is on screen. So it turns out we're not actually using this node here, and that's fine. Might go and edit this shortly once I have, in fact I might do it right now. So let's take a look at this. If I stick my mouse all the way on the top left of the screen and then try and move down to the right or left, it's not really responding now. And so there's two things that we could do. We could either use the delta like so, or we could make it so that when the radial is on screen, the mouse position is being repeatedly recentered. So then it's my next direction that implies the rotation that we want to be at. What I could do, let's have a look. What could I do? Let's just try it. So we got to go into the gameplay ability for the ping. Or do we? I forget exactly where I was at with this. So let's go look through the assets we have. We have this mouse position here. Let's get a reference viewer to that. Apparently we're updating it inside of our player controller. As long as the vector is more than a certain amount. Yeah. So what this is doing is it's saying, as our mouse moves, or our gamepad in the future, I'll need to move this to an input mapping. But as this changes, as long as it's more than a certain magnitude, then we will update that mouse delta. And that just means that you don't get these like little jitters as your mouse moves, basically. So back in our radial center arc here, we could actually use this delta to determine our direction. We would just need to break and make a vector 2 here. Now, it's not going to update in the viewport now because we're not playing. Of course that doesn't work for us. Of course that does not work. So that's great. So let's try the other. Theoretically that would work. Might take a little bit of extra time. Here we've got a reset mouse position function. It's just going to reset our mouse to the center of the screen. Hopefully this is being called repeatedly, so just a little print on screen here. So yeah, it gets called twice and then stops, and so that needs to call a lot more often. Have a look. It should be looping here. So it's looping, and it's setting our mouse position to the center of the screen, which is making the circle a hole because it's dividing by 0, which I need to actually handle. I need to actually handle that if the direction is nearly equal to 0, basically. Then this normalized output and these degrees all become 0. Mouse angle. Angle. This doesn't work. Is this even being used? References. Proximity. Just a reroute. We're not using it. Here we have the opacity, which is the arc. The arc is being rotated by the mouse angle. The actual shape of that arc should always be the half angle here. Like, I want to know in this situation here where my mouse is perfectly in the center of the screen. All we're doing is saying that the rotation angle is 0. So that's all that should happen. Unless we're getting a negative number, which we're not. So I'm curious why that arc breaks when my mouse is perfectly in the middle of the screen. In which case you would imagine it's this by this. There. Why does that break? Which part of this is breaking? And so the way I'm debugging this is, in this case we've got a mouse cursor position subtract the view size divided by 2. And so we're saying what is the direction, and then we're normalizing it, or what's the distance rather in a vector, but then or what is the vector, which is direction and a distance, but then we're normalizing it to 0 to 1. So here, if I just put 0, then I would have expected it to break, but something I know it's when my mouse reaches the center of the screen here. And it's difficult for me to output what this mouse cursor is there. If I take this and don't rotate it, then we get no breaks. If you rotate it by some random value here, you just get this, minus 0.1. It's not a minus value in there that's doing it, and it's not a 0 value either. But either way, we want to move on. We've got some tasks to do. We've got to do this entry shader. So for now, just going to go back in here and fix. We've got one bug to fix at least before we move on. So right now it repeatedly resets my mouse to the center of the screen. So let's not do that. Does that when we open. So our mouse is in the correct place. And then we've got a generally okay radial. So let's get some styling in here as well. So firstly, this is just my foundational radio entry. So I'm going to take this and say radio entry underscore. And we're going to put an icon on top of this. So in order to put an icon on top of here, we'll need a texture. This will need to be parameter text. Let's call it icon. That's fine. Let's go grab an icon so we actually have something to work with. We can use one of the ones. Okay, so we have this icon. That's looking good. Just double check on everything else here. Yeah. Okay, so we have this icon, and we will want to colorize it. So let's make sure that we have color, icon color. We'll just start this off in orange. Seems good. Do as well is just reroute this to icon color so we don't have to grab that again later down the line. Icon color. And here we've got the RGB, but we don't have the A, so I'm actually just going to append the alpha and then name this named icon RGBA. RGBA, cool. Although typically, actually, this should just be alpha because we do want to just use Y icons, but I don't get to that too much right now. Okay, so we have the icon RGBA and the icon color. We want to essentially composite this into this final color here. At the moment, the final color is just 1, and so that's not great. Let's make a new named reroute. Just call it RGBA. Oops. Or in this case, let's just go with RGB. We'll put our A into this opacity later. Okay, so we're going to lerp based off of the icons RGBA, mask out the alpha. We use this to determine between our icon color and our sort of like radial color. So let's get a radial color in here as well. Color. In this case, our radial is just going to be white. It might be grey later on. Let's go half grey. Okay. Radial color here. Put these in. Have a look. Okay. This color composite. Composite, there we go. Okay. So one thing that I need to do is get this icon translated, scaled. So we'll take the 4th UV channel, which is the UI channel, and we'll scale this. We'll append here, append vector, put some icon X scale, or icon scale X, icon scale X, and icon scale Y. In fact, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make a 4 vector and just do icon params. and then use the named channels at the bottom here. So scale X, scale Y, and then I also want to do some position offsets as well. So call it pan X and pan Y. I append these together. And named reroute these icon pan, and these together as well. We'll just named reroute icon scale. Take icon scale, plug it into scale here, and transform this as well. Translate, it's called. Let's do this here, icon pan. These, put that in there. You can see now I haven't put any values in here, so it's all broken. So we need 1100 basically. Should update over here. If I start previewing this, we just have our whole icon. So that's expected. That's awesome. And we can move on. What we need to do is position it towards the top of the shader. So instead of doing this in UMG, where we would place an image and another image, and we'd composite them and move them around, and then do some code that spins it around the radial based on the rotation of the element. We're doing this all inside the shader, and we will basically offset the icon's rotation based on the angle that the segment is being rendered at. And we'll also need to position the icon based on a couple of other things as well. So, well, first let's do a preview node here and get this icon scale correct. So I'm going to just start with 0.5. The icon itself is set to wrap, so I need to go and make sure that that is set to clamp. So the reason that that's doing that is because this is set to wrap. So we'll just make sure that icon is clamped, and now we just have this element in the center, so that's fine. I think we did that correctly. Okay. And now we need to determine, this is like an additive pan, I would say. What we really need to do is position the icon at the top here, but I'm just going to do that by code quickly. Let's put 0.5, negative 0.5. Just trying to hard code it here. Just let me hard code it. Preview this. Interesting that it's so many points up. I wouldn't have expected that. Okay, so the radial color is the icon. Okay, so these are back to front in the color setup here. And then the opacity is being reduced. We'll have to change how the proximity code is being used. But let's keep going. So we now have an icon displaying at least here. However, when we change, say, the start angle to 90 degrees, that has not rotated with us. So we need to take that start angle. We'll take start angle 0 to 1. We should just be able to I would say we would want to rotate this vector. Look at vector. The direction to point to. In this case is the right, but all we have is a start angle. So I'm just going to go and find out what the math is for converting that back from. In Blueprint, you can just do like from X vector or whatever you need from an angle, but search, like, you can do this in so many ways now. Stack Overflow is one of them. Forum posts as well. Just general, like, Googling the math like function that you're looking for. AI like Gemini and things like that are also a great way now of just finding a formula. So I tend to just look for the formulas online. I thought you can create one radial component and just duplicate and rotate it. Yeah, we have been doing that. So we have our, if I try and open up our radial menu real quick. Welcome back. We have our basic radial menu here. No? Somewhere else. Styles here. So in this overlay entries, what we have is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 widgets, and they are just images. So this could be optimized down further, where we just have like mesh widgets in here maybe, and don't even use user widgets, because all this is an image. And inside this image, what we're looking to do next is add the icons at the center point without having to add more widget hierarchy into the mix. And in this case, I'm okay with that. For this case, I think that is a cool thing to do. Is the best way to do this for such a simple radial. And I'll also hopefully today show the alternate. So I'll also do a widget variant as well. But for now, what we're doing is we're converting this start angle into a direction for a lookout vector. So yeah, I just want to rotate this, and I think because I've scaled this, that's why this variable is off, basically. So what I might want to do is like multiply this by the scale. I'm gonna go check this out real quick. I want to get these values back into 0 to 1 space. So if I scale the icon by, I think in this case it's like 10% of the scale, and I have an amount of offset that I want to do in the Y of 1, I think I want to divide, to get this up to the correct scale for translation. No? Didn't like that? May have done it in the wrong direction. What's this doing? It should just be adding. I don't really need to use this. It's a bit overkill. Basically, all I want to do is add the divide, in this case, I think, and then scale it. Of course, that's not going to show me anything. Add nothing. Add 0.1. Add 0.5 should be half. Yeah, okay. So we're halfway up when we add 0.5, which is as expected. And then we're scaling. Assuming the center is 0.5 by default. Yeah. So scaling from the center. But in that case, I can just add my usual, which will be don't add anything in the X and only add like 0.4 in the Y. So now we're near the top. That's much better. I need to this is add pan. Actually no, this is add pan, which we're going to add on top of a named reroute, which we're going to call icon offset. That icon offset is going to be based on the angle from configs. In this case, I'm just going to, at the moment, I'm just going to plug this right in. But then we're going to modify this so that we are positioning it to the right along with the angle that we've applied. So, I mean, at the moment this is too high, so 0.35. Apparently the direction is the cosine of a sine. 0 to 1. So let's go start angle, raw start angle. Apparently this is the direction. I might need to at least multiply this by pi. lookout vector. Vector 3. Okay, sure. Can I just add 0? Third entry. This is also 0. But this is also missing. It was a vector 2, right? So then this doesn't like this because it's no longer vector 2. So I would just mask this. So here we're at the start here. Just about to see it there. So if I now go and change angle, are we at least in the right space? Okay, so that's not working. Let's try a different function. So what else could we do instead to rotate this correctly? Let's take a look at need to check one thing. If I do this, my start angle is 0. I change my scale. It does change it in place, so that is good to know. It is simple. Take start angle 0 to 1, custom rotate, custom rotator, rotate center, rotate angle, V's here. If I just rotate this, like it would need to at least be like, this is probably wrong. No. That is correct now. However, it's actually rotated. So I'm wondering if I can, after I've moved it, can I unrotate it? Can I then take this and unrotate it? Awesome. That'll do. Don't need to do anything else special. Look at that, she figured it out. So we rotate the UVs so that we are panning in the correct direction. Then we're scaling it, and then, oh, it went away. My reroute node. Need that back. Missing a reroute node. There we go. The icon offset. Okay. Icon offset in here. And that's just going to be based off of the distance. Essentially the center point of these two inner and outers. Okay. We are mostly there. Rotate the UVs, add the offset, add the scale, and rotate the UVs. And then we're in a place where we can start drawing that icon. So that's pretty cool. Get this out of the way here. Icon. Okay, so from here now we will just need to... What do we need to do next? One thing is annoying me that I want to resolve before I move any further, which is this feathering. I'm just going to feather these. So now this is all nicely feathered or smooth stepped. So we don't have those harsh angles anymore. And then I want to make sure that I'm getting the distance correctly. And so the distance is relating to this inner and outer radius. Essentially, I would say, or I'd hope, the outer radius minus half the inner radius. No, it would be I want to get this position here. So it's just difference to get, so we want the difference. Then we want to divide that by 2 to get half the difference, and then we just add that to the inner radius. That should be Nope, I did it wrong. Okay, so what would the answer be? It would be 0.48, 0.24, and then it would be 0.5. So what if I divide this by 2? Okay, so that's like the center, and then we have this additional add here if we want to add just a little bit more. So we can also just offset it slightly here. Okay, so that's everything for our radial menu entry. And now if we go and take a look, we've got widgets that are represented here as a generic item. So if we go and take a look at the generic item for now and change the material that we're using on this image, be this case an instance of this one. Okay. Cool. Yep. Go back to our radial menu. So we now have our radial drawn, and all of the iconography is part and parcel with the widget, or with the material, I should say. So Again, the point of putting the icons scaled in within our material is because now we have a much smaller hierarchy to update at runtime. Like it's all done on the GPU. We're saving cycles for the actual game by doing this, which is rendering this in the UI. So pretty cool. Okay, next we want to apply the correct icon into these elements. So inside the material here, we have a scalar parameter for when we're hovered. When we're initting the style here, we have the angle span and the start angle. What we can do is take the get data asset, I think we called it. Let's double check what we called this entry. One thing I've just realized isn't great. This is radial entry data. Right, so we haven't actually implemented this data knowing what it represents, because we said we would use this tag, this gameplay tag here, to associate a radial entry, which is just a widget class. And in fact, we would want to remove title and description because it's just a widget class that relates to something with a gameplay tag. And so that something could be like voice data dot whatever, and then that would relate to all the different voice data, so that we don't have to double define a bunch of stuff. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and remove some of this information, because this radial entry data, it just represents like how are we building a radial menu. And so here we're building a radial menu by having some entries, which, to be honest, like, you know, these could change. This could be a struct. This would be better as a struct as opposed to static data, because this is the bit of the data that is actually somewhat dynamic. The intent here was to say, you can, as a designer, you can create a radial menu, you can create this data and say how it appears in terms of a radial entry style. So it can be like a black wedge with a ball and an icon, or it can be a plain wedge with a hover highlight that is gradiented, or it can be patterned or whatever. And so the idea was that each entry could have its own widget class. Like, they're not homogenized into like one style, because I wanted to do a cool radial that had like wind, water, fire, earth, and for those I would use a custom widget class for each one, and I would do something interesting with the materials. But in this case, they could all use the same widget class, and they do. And the only difference between the 4 or 5 different radial data entries at this point is the tag that actually represents them. Which is why I say that the radial menu here, the configuration of this, could actually be a struct. If I'm saying that the only difference is widget gameplay tag to relate to some other asset, to get your other visual data, your icon, text, title, that all comes from the actual definition of the raw data, which itself has a gameplay tag, which is how we find the item. So yeah, I might change how I'm doing this from this data entry span to a struct that's like, yeah, let's do it. I think it's just going to be better as a struct. There's no need for this to be static data. And in fact, as static data, we just create tons of bloat where the only thing we do is duplicate data assets and change tags. So let's, I guess the best thing you could do is in radial core, radial data here, radial entry data, what we could instead do is radial menu data, and this is where we define our struct. So we come in, we create a blueprint struct f underscore radial menu. So struct for a radial menu, and in here we just say this is what is it? Well, it'll be radial menu entry, won't it? Radial menu entry. This will be the radial entry widget class. Widget radial entry. It could be a soft class, but I'm just going to go with a hard class reference for now. So this is widget class. We'll add the float, which is the entry span, or angle span, I think we may have called it. Let's take a look. Entry span I called it in the original, so we'll stick with that, entry span. Put a little tooltip on here. The angle this occupies. Widgets, the widget style for this entry. The angle that this occupies, and then our last one is that's a gameplay tag. Gameplay tag. Save default values, nothing. And so here we could say generic is the default one. We could say the default span is 45 degrees. Back in our menu, I'm going to just reconfigure this data real quick. So entry, radial menu data. What I kind of want to do is have this be really really configured by like one piece of data. So although this is a radial entry data, it's a gameplay tag, the widget class, like I'm getting rid of this. Instead I'm going to hold an array of these inside here. So radial entries, this is going to be f underscore radial entry data, radial menu entry, sure, an array, and I'll just fill in some default data here. Boop, 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 boop. They're all generic. The first one is 108 degrees, and they're not going to have any gameplay tags. This is my default, and then I make a class for this. Miscellaneous data asset. Select DA radial menu underscore. In this case, it's pings. This is the ping menu, and that's how it looks. And then we'll add additional data to this in the future for like what the central widget is as well. And I guess what the raw menu style is as well, because we have that as a property that we can play with. Okay, so just closing everything down. I will need to go back to some of these. Let's just close everything down. Sure. Okay, back to basics here. We're going to be able to basically delete all of these assets and then also stop ourselves from bloating out the project in the future by changing how this is being done. So there is a rhyme and reason to choosing to do this. The radial menu here, instead of entries defined like this, we're going to have radial entry or radial menu data. Menu data. Radial menu data as an object reference. We're going to break the, we're going to get the entries from this, and then we're going to each loop through these, and that's how we're going to draw this radial menu. So when we construct the entries here, first we remove all the children, then we start moving through each of these entries. We're just going to promote this to a local variable L entry. L radial entry. take that and break it. Then now we have all the data that we wanted from before. We need to validate this still. Okay, and then we've got this entry span here, which in this case we can pull like so. Valid, we can draw it. We're not accessing entry span again as far as I know. Oh, update hovered entry. We're going through all the entry spans here. So let's promote this to a local. I guess we could just loop through this. Again, we'll promote this to a local variable L entry. So this, so that we can move this over. Okay. To here. This is the index here. Move this completed over to here. And so now instead of entry span, we are grabbing it from the index here. But in that case, we are reading this, so we don't need that. Here we're also reading this because it's just this index. Make sure we're not reading, so we're doing it here as well. Okay. One thing that you can do on these struct entries to clean your graph up is click on it and then hide the unconnected pins. And in some cases as well, that actually reduces the memory footprint of the class because it no longer compiles the reference to certain entries within the struct. So if your struct has like a class reference, I think the place I've discovered this was in a building system, like a base building system, and in here we had structure, right? And we also had widget. And in one class we only needed the widget, in the other class the data that we care about is the structure blueprint actor. And you hide those constructed pins, and then the actual, the menu side, the UI side didn't care about the class, and the class side didn't care about the widget. Hey Baracker, Tastev, welcome, and I'm glad that you enjoyed the shooter template video. That was that was one of the earlier videos where we were focused more on blueprint prototyping, and nowadays we're doing a lot more UI. But we will be doing some more games jams. The game jam season is kind of at an end, so no game jams lately, but I will definitely be jumping back onto game jams for the mental break from UI. But we'll be doing that in the new year. Got a message on my other computer. I am back now. Okay, so first entry hover. Okay, cool. We were just cleaning up this class. So one thing that we realized is that we were sort of coupling data in a way that was, or producing data in a way that was requiring us to A, make matching sets of data, which is a problem, and B, make a lot of these assets here that have started to dwindle down in size to the point where I'm like, I could actually define this better. And that better definition in this case is just one data asset that holds the relevant data as well. And this is the entries in this case. And we're also going to hold the center, and then we're going to hold some other styles in the future, some sounds, some things like that. And right now I'm just trying to get rid of this setup that we started with. So like we have this entries here, like we don't. I swear I just cleaned that up. I swear literally like 2 seconds ago I cleaned exactly this up. I did. I just didn't finish. Okay. Radio entry data. Well, you don't really need radio entry data, so we're going to unhook that. Put this in here. I'm using the control button to drag these pins around and maintain their connections, so you can control click and then move these to new places. It's a little handy tip. And then we were talking about hiding these pins to keep the graph a little cleaner. Okay. Just open this out here. I think what we would want now in this radio entry widget is maybe it would want to know its entry span. That might be relevant to itself to do certain animations with the well, actually we have the display angle here, which is entry span. And so yeah, the only other thing that we would actually need to push in is the asset gameplay tag, and we should push that into the radial widget. So let's do that. Entry radial widget, because this is how the radio entry is going to essentially find an asset in the library that it cares about that has visual data, basically. Gameplay tag. So change this class here. We'll say radio entry data tag, or rather asset gameplay tag. Something like that. Yeah, so sort of forcing the system to use my design, but that's okay, because this is all for fun and experimentation. I'm kind of creating a dependency, not a dependency, but I'm creating a kind of locked garden system here where you have to use these gameplay tags so that we're not hooking loads of different content together through data assets and pointers and like raw stuff in that sense. It's like when you need the thing, you can use your data tag or your tag to go and find the asset that you care about. And there are good ways and bad ways to do that as well. And I think like a good way is to have that kind of all managed somewhere else and stored and cached. But right now I'm just going to do, for simplicity and speed, I might just put it straight into the widget entry itself. So let's go down here. I think we've got to the point where we can delete this entries thing, and I think we've got to the point where we can delete this entry span as well. Don't need that. But this is just determining whether you're hovering on an element or not in code, which we may be able to delete actually, because we're doing that through the material now, which is a lot cheaper than doing like this loop is just ongoing every frame. We can actually remove that from here technically. So the only thing this was doing was telling the widget that it was hovered in order to have it like change its appearance. But we've done all of that inside the material now. I'll keep the function because austerity, I suppose. But ultimately I would like to remove that tick function, and I could remove that tick function because we're doing all of our highlight logic through this. You can see here how it's like based on where your mouse is on the radial, it's highlighted. So you can imagine this is the center of the screen and this is the direction map. We're using that map's position to control that. And then in our extended version, we have an icon as part of that as well. Just set this up. So this is the extra icon logic. It's just rotations and scales to make sure that it's in the right point or the right position as we change this element here. And so this could be 180 and this could be 90, and it will always position itself correctly, which is cool. Save that there. Okay. So closing these down, this is fine. Okay, so now let's actually get our icons working, because we said we had a little bit of cleanup to do, which in this case was just making sure that we could define that radial menu data. So in our styles for our generic radial menu, let's just make sure that this data asset is set correctly. So these are our pings. You can see how nice that is now. It's like you don't have a radial style. Soon we'll be putting this widget inside the centerpiece. So we'll do that a little bit later. I actually need to put that on my list. Radial center. We should probably do that before all these other styles. Radial entry shader, we technically haven't finished that. Radial entry icon, we did do that. Radial toggle on screen. Pretty sure we actually already have that. Anyway. Oh, yeah. There is a missing validation here. This can be invalid. So we just need to grab all of our code, just move it over and make sure that we're ensuring on that. Well, not ensuring, but ensuring that we have it. Overloaded term. Okay, cool. So menu generic, let's give it a data. So we could change this data in the future, it should be pretty nice. Easy. Hit play, center menu, we've got our highlights in here. Don't know why that isn't going to fully white at the moment. I think it's because I set my default radial color to gray. I think that's all that is. It is really annoying that my character is reacting to my mouse X in this scenario. I wonder if I can resolve that in any way that is graceful without having to go into the character for the FPS plugin. I guess one option would be to go into the core and change our character here. We'll find his inventory. He has some starting items here. It just says randomize my starting item. Maybe if I say no. Inventory is an assault rifle. Can I just say unarmed? It's the assumption that I do not have an item if I do not have arms. Let's delete these two items. There we go. That's better for now, at least. So we have this like little punchy guy. Okay, that works for me. Radial menu. Okay, so we can open and close this. That is fine, and it works fine. So we can close that off the list. Radial entry shader, that's what we're working on. Don't forget the input binding component. Note for future self, working with gas companion. Don't forget the input binding component. Why is that in here though? Oh right, yeah, because this was stopping me from having automated bindings for gameplay abilities. It's a plugin that you get off the marketplace. So anyway, we can close this. We've got our radial menu generic. That's all good. So now we need to actually have these entries go and find their relevant data. So this is where a decision needs to be made on how we get that data in particular, since It might be a data asset. It might be an object class. It might be, who knows, it might be a row in a table. And I would want to allow my future self to be able to decide that. And in the default case, the concept is it's a data asset in a certain place, but it's not a data asset of a type. So the concept is you use that asset registry to go and find the correct class of asset, and then you run through and check their tags. And you would want to store them. You would want to store them smartly as well, or in a clever way, rather than running that asset registry get every time. I would want to cache that stuff. So one way to do that, this actually might be the better way of doing this, is rather than giving this the asset gameplay tag, is we actually give it an object. Just call this context. Okay. Back in our Radial menu, when we create these and we have this context here, if you bring a reroute down like this, highlight them both, and then collapse this to a function, you get a function with the input output. It's just like a real neat little way of doing that. Okay. So given a gameplay tag from my Radial entry and outputting a context here, this is how I'm going to link these up. And I could just get rid of this gameplay tag concept entirely and just go and say, you know what, my Radial menu entry, it just takes an object. It just straight up takes an object, and that would save us just overcomplicating this for now. So let's go do that instead. In our Radial entry here, instead of a gameplay tag, let's just say context object. Just take an object class. Object. We'll use this as a soft object reference, hopefully. Yeah, a soft object reference. Let's try that. Then in our this is our Radial data for pings. Boop boop boop. We have, oh, it hasn't saved. All right, yeah. So when you change the struct that's within a data asset, you have to recompile the data asset. So now you have this. So now I could say DA ping. Yeah. So now I can actually go and just pick the direct thing. So we're just going to do that. We're going to say this is the basic one. This is, I think, I think we said it was going to be like enemy, loot, something else. And we don't actually have enemy. So I need to go make enemy. Let's make enemy here. Just do this in red. I think there is actually skull in here. Yeah, let's use that. Okay. And then this is enemy. This actually doesn't need the gameplay tag, which is overcomplicating a system that we want to just get working. So let's get rid of that. Okay, so we've got DA ping enemy. And the cool thing about this now is this is an object class. So this context could be anything, and it could even be, well, it can't be filled at runtime, so that's not great. But it's kind of cool. So let's go. We had ammo, we had loot. Let's make each of these just 90 degrees. I do like having it represent that the system can do semi-degrees. So we're going to go with that. They're all the generic style. And then we've got the ping ammo. What else do we have? We could say defend. This could go back to being an orange, I guess. Do we have a shield in here? Just do this. Objective. But this will just be DA objective. Cool. And so now this opens with a context object when you guys create. Okay. Oh no, it crashed. That sucks. Let's reopen it. And we're back. Okay, so let's have a look. What have we got? We were partway through looking into our radial system. We had radial data that we no longer need, which is all of these. We have pings that we created an objective for, so that's cool. We have a menu that creates widgets. Don't need this new function. We have a radial entry that currently takes a hard reference of a context object. We're going to take a soft reference of that context object, which allows us to load it as we need it. So let's just refresh this node if it doesn't crash. Refresh. It's over. Compile that. Okay. Now in our styled widget, although what we could do, what we should probably do, is if this radial entry, has been drawn on event begin play, get rid of that. In its style. What we want to do is async load the asset, the context asset, assuming it's valid, which I think you can actually run a validated get. So this validated get, it's valid, object reference. Turns true if it's not null. Yeah, so as a soft reference you can think of as just like a path to a file in the registry. It doesn't exist as an object that has like any kind of scope. It's or you know, there's no memory loaded there yet. It's just a path, and so then we'll load it through this function, and upon completion we can then actually do things with that. This is a function that is going to be necessary for every radial entry, and so I'm wondering whether I kind of figure out a way. Let's say, for example, event construct. We could do it on pre-construct, I suppose, but custom event load, custom event load asset, load context, I should say. Load context. It's going to take it, load it, and if that's valid, the custom event on context loaded, and this is where I would do something like this. Context ref, context loaded, and then I would just put that and load context here. Yeah, maybe. And that would be on completed. Could not find a param pin, so then just grab all these and refresh them, and then plug that back in. Cool. Right, now in our radial styles, radial generic, event graph. Here, event loaded on context loaded, I know that this, in this one's case, this is a generic one, so I should probably duplicate it. Radio entry, and we'll say ping for this case. In fact, I'll need to go and change the Radial menu so that all of these widgets are now specifically this, because we're loading, in this case we know we're loading contexts, which we've done here, that are pings, and so this is now going to say, oh, are we a ping? Like, are we a ping data? It's like, yes, you are a ping data. Get icon, image, data underscore ping. We have texture. Okay, we'll also add a keyword in here. So see how I was typing like image, icon, all these different words. You can add keywords to variables if I remember correctly. So like icon image, for example, and hopefully just type in icon. Doesn't work in that case. You have to be very specific. It's a texture. And so because this is a soft ref, actually makes me wonder if I'm loading that radial, it may as well be hard references. Back to the drawing board again. Let's go back to here. This may as well be a hard ref, because we know if we're drawing this radial up on the screen, the rest of it should be loaded. Is that fair to say? It's the lower level data basically that needs to, the lowest level of data. Like, knowing classes is fine. They're not going to be big if everything inside of them is soft referenced like this. So in this case, like, yeah, we wouldn't need this asynchronous load, because this can be a hard reference, and I think that's reasonable. I mean, we've made that decision here with this widget ref itself. So I'm just going to go back to the drawing board and say, actually, no, this is a hard ref. Just make the best decisions. Or know when to make that soft and hard reference decision. Like, know when to do that. Load the context here. We can do this. Call itself. That's just an infinite loop. That's hilarious. I guess in this case, this is fine. And here, I'm just going to say load ping data. I'm just going to put that at the end of our pre-construct. Event pre-construct here. Let's just add a parent call to that so that we don't miss anything the parent's doing. And then just load ping data. Or in this case, I might actually just call it apply ping data context. Get context. I don't need the input here. Call this apply ping data. Get this texture here. Oh wait, no. No, I need to asynchronously load this. So I'm going to apply this to the material basically. We're going to take this and we're going to set a texture parameter on it. Which I think we called icon. I need to go and double check, but we need to load that now. Either way, like we need to load that, because that is the expensive part, right? Is the icon. So that bit is soft referenced. And we called it icon. So there we go. That's what we named it. It's a parameter 2D. It's called icon. It lives up here. Easy. Icon. Once this is completed, we have to cast this to a texture. Cast to texture 2D, which of course will exist, will be loaded. It's going to be pretty difficult for the engine to not load that one. That's going to be fine. Hello. Right. So now before we go any further is make sure we validate this, because if we're ever calling something on pre-construct, that's going to happen immediately as soon as we hit compile, and that is like 90% of your crashes if you're doing any blueprint code in a widget. Okay, so right now there is no context reference, but if we were to change that DA ping, this should just ammo. It should just work. Not going to work as long as the context is valid. Asynchronous. This might not work because we are. Is that not working? Oh right, yeah. This might not work because we're asynchronously loading at editor time, which doesn't work. No, it's just not working in general. Why? On pre-construct, apply the ping data. Is the context valid? It most definitely should be. It's right there. DA ping ammo. Hitting this. Hitting this. Huh. Interesting. Well, I'm just going to leave this here and hit play because I'm pretty convinced that this will work. Doesn't seem to work in design time, which is a shame because that would have been really cool. We opened up our radial menu, generic, context loaded. We can get rid of that. Go to our radial menu here. Oh look! Oh, some of them have loaded, so that's pretty cool. Maybe that was the issue. I wasn't. That's pretty awesome though. Those icons are not set to be clapped. Happens sometimes. So let's go batch update all these items. Right click asset actions, bulk edit by property matrix here. Yes, I want to edit all of them. And then you just type in is it clamp? Piling method, clamp. Now back in our generic radial, yeah, we've got these different ones. Okay, cool. So then from here, we're supposed to be applying colors as well. So radial menu entry here. We can also set the color. Set color. Set vector parameter value. That'll be icon color. This ping should hold color. Sorry, wrong one. This one. Get color. It's in there. Now we've got the red, orange, yellow, okay. Back in our radial menu, we've got ping for enemy, ping for ammo, ping for loot. Loot is meant to be a star in purple. So there's some things that are not necessarily working great, and I think that the issue is with the async loading in editor time. We end up with some conflicts, like crushing each other in terms of loading. So what I want to do to test is just block load this. So it is working. Hold that for a second. No, it's still interesting. It's still loading that incorrectly. Just hit play and see. Yep, so as it suggested, these two are not appearing correctly. Objective is fine, enemy is fine, and this should be should just be go, right? So if we look at this, we've got a generic basic ping 180 degrees. Then we've got an enemy ping, which works. Then we've got an ammo for 45 degrees in green. Ah, right, yeah, okay, I remember this now. So here's a problem. I can't, with it being a composited material, I can't put a material in there. I can only put a texture in there. And so there's two ways I could solve this. I could add extra boilerplate code that says, hey, texture icon, and then like a little tick box that's like, which one do you want to use? And then this texture is used for the radial menu for the compositing aspect of it. And this material is used in other cases. I just have a material here because I needed to change scale, X, Y positioning, just like edit an icon that we have in the library without re-importing the icon itself. Now, this icon's too small, basically. That was the only reason that like this material was needed. So what I might be able to do is just right-click this and turn this into a texture, or at least create a utility that turns this into an actual texture. And then we'd be back at like this ammo will have an icon instead of a material. But I do want there to be material allowance within this ping system, because certain pings, yeah, I might want a sheen on it, right? I might want something interesting happening. So that's why we have that material property, and we have the texture as a fallback. So with that in mind, let's go to our instance here. Apply data. It goes for the texture first, so we could just swap this around. Then I'm just going to export this. There was 2 items that I exported here. Yeah, can I export these as PNGs? Yeah, nice. Let's just move this. I need a project folder for this UI project because I currently do not. Let's just go new working folder. I'm just going to pop them open in Photoshop, basically. I think that that's going to be simplest. Where is it? It's gone. I just like paused, like, hang on. Where did it go? So I could just re-import this. Ta-da! And then just re-import this. Ta-da! Okay, I didn't really want to do that to the base assets, but I've done it now. Ammo, you are not necessary. Let's just type in ammo here. Cool. And then go to our loot. You are not necessary. Star. T_star. Let's close everything down. Do you want to close it? No, I'll just save it. Menu, open. Okay, cool. So, really nasty. Pretty nasty looking. But, yeah. Questionable choice of shaders there. Or colors, etc. So let's clean it all up. Let's get it looking a little bit better. At least for the end of this session. So, to clean that all up. Firstly, the opacity needs to care about the icon. Like by default, it needs to always show that icon at full opacity, basically. And so that's the icon RGBA. So I would mask like this and then multiply this by icon color. I would do that for its alpha. I'm going to take this up to our opacity here, and I'm going to try and merge these together. So I want the wedge to have its own opacity, which is this, and then I want the icons alpha to switch between the two. So in this case, we've got 0. So that will come from the wedge and 1 from here. But what we'll do is we'll use the icons. Hello. Append. How are we going to do this? Yes, icon. Change this RGBA here. Doesn't like this now because this is now color. I'll tell you what, let's undo it. Icon color, cool. And then this will just be named reroute icon opacity. That might be just simpler, right? Icon opacity. That is the value that we use here. What icon RGBA? Let's just do icon RGBA. Here we've got this going again. I'm not a huge fan of how that is feeling, so I'm going to change how this is done. Just named reroute this. Icon alpha. This can just be RGBA. Or RGB, sorry. So here we would just get icon alpha. So looping between the two, this is the RGB that we want. Based on the icon alpha, we use the radial color or we use the icon color. And then here, instead of RGBA, we get the icon alpha. That determines where we're masking. I suppose you could call this, instead of alpha, you could just call this icon mask. That would read a bit better everywhere. And then I've got a debug of the mouse position here, which is pretty cool. If I plug this in, you can see a little dot underneath my mouse. Which is, again, it's just what's the cursor position distance to the screen position pixel, and then just power it into a little circle. So then you get this little circle following your mouse for debugging purposes. Okay, so now at least our icon is rendering at full opacity, and then we have the radial shader on top. Next, I kind of want to highlight the outside this ring. So a line here at this far edge on this outer, I want a thicker line. So I'm going to go and write that real quick. Actually got quite a lot of shader instructions happening in this at the moment, so I might want to simplify at some point. For now, let's continue. I mean, we're saving on the CPU. We're not having to tick over these, but let's have a look. So we want a white line at the distant edge here, which for us is the outer radius. Circle on the outer radius as well. This is the ring itself, the full ring. This is just a circle. So I'm wondering whether I create a mask that is that line, and then we can stroke it, like animate it and things like that. But the other thing I was thinking was just adding it directly by multiplying a few variables, basically, or using distance and basically saying, oh yeah, the opacity here is 1. So right now we have an opacity derived from wedge here that is based on distance to side. It should be based on my mouse position, because proximity is definitely having an effect on it. Where is this used? Able to find it, apparently. Where is proximity used in my graph? Oh, right here. So the opacity, yeah, okay. So radial. Did we ever save out radial opacity? No. So named review here, radial opacity. Up here, radial opacity, we'll just plug that in here. That can be 0.5 here. That's the radial opacity plus the proximity, which is essentially 0 to 0.5. So it brightens the color. But really, I want that to happen to the color here. I want that to be in 0 to 1 space. Yeah, so now that's not working. Yeah, because we don't have any radial opacity. There we go. So that's kind of cool. What's going on there? Got this like beam going straight through this asset here. Oh, I know what that is. That's because of the icon clamp. There's actually an alpha in this icon. go and take a look at, yeah, I should really use this icon. That's better. I'll make sure that the data is using that as well. So as soon as I saw that beam, essentially this has a glow on it, and that glow is clipping into the edges. And so wherever those pixels are on that edge, and when we're using the clamp version of a texture for these tiling methods, it will pull those pixels out all the way. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, I know what that is. And so then we have this basic version without, like the clean version without the underlay highlight. So the next thing I want to do is I'm gonna make this kind of style here, where we have this line and then the whole widget is lit by like a gradient here. So I'm gonna try and set that up real quick, and then it's got these lines coming off into the distance as well. So I want to kind of attempt to reproduce that too, which is going to be a pain. It's not really, it's part of the material, so but we'll work on that now. So entry shader here, more work on the entry shader. So right now it's highlighting with proximity. Really, I just want it to be based on whether it's inside at all. This gives me a 0 to 1. Actually, that's probably okay. Make sure that this isn't rendering incorrectly when I look here. Oh yeah, okay. No, this is fine. Okay, and then we can still see that on the top element there. So yeah, like I say, I need to go to the basic ping here and change this for the clean version. Same with, I'm sure there was another asset that used that. But all of these icons are different scales, which is super annoying. Maybe I shouldn't have re-imported these textures. Maybe they should be this big. At least now it looks like it's intentionally scaled. Okay, next up. This isn't working on center screen because my widget isn't actually in the center of the screen. There we go. Okay. I think I'm going to have to call it here because it's been 2 hours and I don't really want to go over 2 hours. I'm going to work on the shader off stream and then I'll come back for sort of like the final wrap up stream where maybe it's just going to be half an hour long, where it's just me showing a couple of different permutations of the radial. You can see here in the in the task list that I'm like, oh, and then it does the right ping, and there's a configurable radial center that maybe has some text in there, and some tooltips for like the buttons that you press, and some variant radial styles to show you like the kind of concept that this is doing. But I think that we've pretty much gone through the process, and you can see how it's all laid out. This is a radial now. You can press the button and you can highlight it, and you can style it very heavily. And I think what I'll do off stream is style this in a couple of different ways, and then I'll share a little video sort of showing that. So I'm going to finish this panel here off cam, and it's going to come with a bunch of different radial options, and actually perform those pings into the world as well. And that'll be it for this radial menu sketch. And then but yeah, I'm happy with the idea that it's all based off of material. That is really cool. And then it's all just like material work from here. Things like taking the radius and multiplying this basically. If we take the distance, in fact, if we just take a radius, so here we already have radius. If we start previewing this, we already have this cool visual. And then if we were to say multiply the wedge opacity by that radius, see, now you get this this kind of appearance, which is cool. So you start getting that different kind of look in there. I'd need to multiply it a little bit, but you can see how it's just a bunch of tweaks, a bunch of experimentation on the look of it. And there's a little bit of work to be done on the green circle thing, because I do want to take the mouse alpha, or the mouse delta, sorry, I should say, and that will change. Problem is with delta is that when your mouse is actually in the top left of the screen, you can't have a left delta, so there needs to be a solution there, which I'll show as well, for keeping this mouse basically clamped to the inside. You can see where the green circle is on my screen, but yeah, essentially at the moment you can get your mouse all the way up here, and then when you drag down to the right, nothing happens until you get all the way back down again. You have to move this really quite heavily. So I want to resolve that as well. So write that down on the list. It's like fix the mouse delta. Use mouse delta is what I should say. But yeah, 2 hours on doing a bunch of material stuff. That's how it goes. It's game dev in a nutshell. Awesome. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.